Mere conservatism.
Well, I'm very excited about this time of year. I love Christmas time.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'm Cleve Walker, and this is Mere Conservatism. And the reason I'm glad to hear that, because I'm hearing from a lot of folks, they're not really feeling it this year. I mean, they're not. And I think you can understand why.
I think one Christmas song that has meant a lot to me this year is Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Have you ever just listened to that song and kind of said some of the lyrics to yourself and thought about just the sentimentality of it all? Yeah. And I'm really enjoying that this year with my little kids and being around my family and stuff like that.
I'm glad to hear that. The Christmas tune that kind of, I don't know, just kind of settles my heart is Silent Night. For some reason, David, anytime I hear that, I immediately feel a sense of peace. And I can't explain it.
That's a good one.
It just does. So I got to admit, this is a kind of a dark time for our nation. So
Yes.
if you're looking at that only, I can understand why a lot of folks are just maybe struggling a bit.
Cleve, I would have not been shocked if this week we had fire and brimstone rain from heaven directly on the White House.
I saw you tweet that. I saw that. And why? What happened that made you?
This week, Joe Biden signed the Respect for Marriage Act. Mm-hmm. He gave a speech beforehand, and basically what he said was, he said a lot of stuff, a lot of terrible things he said. One of the things that he said, Cleve, was if you don't think that transvestites, that drag queens should perform for children, you're a racist.
I heard that.
Did you notice that he said he equated all these things. They're all the same thing. Yes. All these things are the same thing. Homophobia, transphobia, racism, all this stuff is the same, which means if you're one, you're all of those.
Right.
Which, by the way, is ridiculous. He invited a bunch of drag queens to come to this event, which is confusing to me because even if you just take the issue at hand for face value.
What's it got to do with it?
What's it have to do with drag queens?
Right.
This is supposed to be about monogamous relationships, even with a man and a woman and a woman. And of course, that's not a marriage. We know that. But even if you're going to cede that point, that's not the type of people that were invited to the signing. The type of people that were invited were the most promiscuous, filthy, debauched drag queens you can think of. What is that? And I'll tell you what it has to do with it, Cleve, because I actually know what it has to do with it.
What does it have to do with it?
Because this is the path that we're on.
Right.
There's no stopping it.
Right.
Joe Biden said that this was a first step or a good step. He didn't say first step, but he said this is a step forward. And guess what? There is no end to this path. There is no bottom to this pit.
Explain yourself, though, because ostensibly this has already been conditioned to not apply to people whose conscience will not allow them to actually endorse or perform so-called gay marriage events. What's your concern then that it means more than that?
Well, there's no a compromise is not going to work. In other words, the argument a long time ago was, how does it affect you?
Right. That's always a big argument.
Yeah. It doesn't affect you if two dudes want to get married. It doesn't affect
two adults. Yeah.
And there are some issues with that argument, but a lot of well-meaning people said, well, okay, that'll be the end. If we just say, okay, you want the privileges of a union the way that heterosexual couples have, okay, I guess we'll give you that and we can put it to bed, right? We can put it to rest. Nope. Because it went from it doesn't affect you to bake the cake, bigot.
I like the way you put that. It did literally make that leap, and it wasn't supposed to, not in the minds of a lot of folks.
And now it's even maybe take your kids away from you if you don't affirm their identity, that kind of thing. And there are people that want to do that. Mm-hmm. And so this is like I said, this is a slippery slope that doesn't have a bottom. And there's no telling how far how dark this is going to get. And this is we've come to a point here where we're almost too far gone. I mean, I don't even know.
You don't see it turning around.
It's time to pull the emergency ripcord on this stuff. I heard somebody say that there's a pattern people go through where they say, well, there's no need to fight. And then they say, well, it's too soon to fight. And then they say, it risks too much to fight. And then they say, it's too late to fight. It goes on down the path to eventually it's too late. It's over.
Give it up.
And I think we're just about there.
Okay.
Because way back at the beginning, people said it's too early to have this fight. This is not the hill you want to die on, right? Well, don't die on any hill. I mean, how about that? But but stand for what's right. And this is what Obergefell has wrought, this decision that gay marriage is a thing that people have a right to, and the Supreme Court decided that.
Right.
Has wrought what we see now, where drag queens who are promoting promiscuity and possibly pedophilia are now being invited to the White House for signing of major bills. And this is not the end, because there are 12 Republicans who voted for this bill. They voted for this bill. And what are they thinking? Like, are they thinking like, just give them this and then that'll be the end?
They're thinking that this is a good political decision to make, because for them, it's a compromise they can live with. And what you're saying is, no, you didn't compromise.
You can't compromise.
You gave away the whole thing.
And they're not going to, I'm telling you, these people, the compromise where they carve out a compromise for religious liberty, that's not going to be good enough. I'm telling you, it's not going to be good enough. It's not going to work.
Anytime you allow the government to codify something into law, you've already lost that battle, because it becomes now something that eventually, it might not at that point, but eventually it will mean now we can enforce something against you, whereas before it was something that we tried to force by other means. Now we can literally put the power of the government, the federal government now is behind us. And we've already seen, David, what they've done when they do that. They literally now say, we decide what we can do with those who oppose this viewpoint. And we have the full force of legality and law behind us to do it. And that's what happened.
So it's getting a lot worse. And, the Republicans that voted for it, they need to be primaried at least, or at the very least, we need to pick out a couple of them to primary, like Mitt Romney. I think he's a prime candidate for somebody that the Republicans should primary in the state of Utah, and they should say, this is why you're gone. This is why we're taking you out.
We need to make a point.
Stuff like this.
Yes, we need to make a point. We need to show this is what's going to happen in the future for others who still want to think they can cross the aisle, which means, it's always been to me, give up and compromise and give the Democrats what they want and do something to make me look halfway decent. As if I did this because I'm a decent person and I just feel like we can work it out if we compromise. Compromise always means they get what they want and Republicans do not. In
this context, yes, that's always what it means.
That's a good point, and it's done. And now, again, for me, David, and now this is the end of this subject for me as far as what I think on this point. For me, the problem has been, again, the American church has not been loud and in charge in warning about this, let alone defeating this. But there are a few. Franklin Graham made a big statement about this recently. And there are a few others who are doing that. But for the most part, again, it's one of those issues where the American church has remained silent. Or, even worse, have given their assent to it, because in their mind, our job is not to confront, not to get in arguments. Our job is to do the ministry and leave all that stuff out of the picture, and that's sad to me.
I wonder, and this is not a slight or slap at anybody, but I wonder if the part of this is the feminization.
Oh, yeah.
Of the church and Christianity.
Now, when I say I agree with you. Now, I'm going to state this right now, because the minute you just said that, it almost sounds like you're slamming womanhood.
Yeah, and I'm not.
Not at all. Now, I know what you're saying. This is this. For the most part, It's a generality. I'll admit this. Many people have assumed the feminine aspect of basically kind of mothering and trying to prevent
being
the little
caring,
ones
being empathetic,
which is good.
That is good.
It's a God. It's a God thing, but that's not the only viewpoint that should be represented in human relationships. There's the father part, okay, the dad,
where he shoots you in the face with a bazooka.
So my point is, being kind and being gentle and being approachable is important, but there is a time. Especially, I think men understand this in a way that perhaps some women don't, is that there's a time you got to get ugly and say, no, I'm not standing for this. Not standing if you're talking to your kid, we're not going to have this. We're not going to do this. This is a no. And there's a time, too, and this is the part that saddens me, David. There's a time that fathers need to stand up for the families and say, no. We're taking. As a matter of fact, and I'll let you address this, I've seen more women do that, literally take a stand emphatically and come out against the things we're talking about. I've seen more women do that than men. And
there's a mama bear aspect to it too.
But that breaks my heart because mama bear's good, but daddies, we need you. Okay, we need you right now to stand up and say, Mama Bear, okay, thanks for what you're doing. I'll take this now and go ahead. I'm sorry. That's the way I feel. All right. Some good news. Well, before I get to the good news, if you want to see what America is headed for as far as what the progressives want and what Biden wants, look no further than California. Mm-hmm. California, and I've heard it said all my life, as California goes, so goes the nation. I never completely understood it for a while, but this is what they want now. After years of championing policies to accommodate and expand protections for illegal immigrants, California, sanctuary state, Gavin Newsom, Mr. Democrat, is warning President Biden, if you reverse former President Trump's border policies, it could break his state. The state of California is in danger. He says, right now, it's not working what's happening, and a post-42 world won't work for us. So he's asking Biden not to.
The 42 is a reference to the policy that keeps people on the other side of the border as they're being processed.
And he's asking Biden not to do it right now unless we're ready for it, because he's saying right now it's killing his state.
Gavin Newsom, isn't he the guy? That thought that all the illegal immigrants in his state ought to get free health care?
Right.
That's the same. And that was earlier this year that he came out and said they're all getting universal health care.
And also the state that's working on reparations right now for minorities, for blacks. They're working on it right now. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So but they can't handle all the influx of illegal immigrants. It's a real problem. And I think that as soon as 2023 hits, that issue may just explode.
It will.
I have a feeling.
It will. Now, by the way, and this is a point I think needs to be taken. Newsom is setting himself up to run, and not Biden. I mean, Biden may say he's going to run.
So is he going to act like this might be a position of power for him, a way for him to run against Joe? On the immigration issue, really? To
differentiate himself from Joe, and also to pretend, I was the first one to sound the alarm in the Democrat Party that this is not a good thing and we got to do something different.
It's amazing. I think that you could be right on that. It could be some political posturing, because you got to understand, these folks, when they're running for office, they have to have an issue. They have to. I mean, you have to differentiate yourself enough
somehow
from who you're running against that you have a lane to run in, and maybe this is where he's going to try to differentiate himself from Joe. I mean, he could differentiate from him in that he has a pulse.
Yes,
that might help.
That would be a strong point.
That would be a strong point. But yeah, this might be another way he may try to do it, which to me it rings hollow, but it might work for some people.
California is championing the green cause and has been for years. Again, they're doing the reparation thing, which for them is going to, they think, buy a lot of votes because that's what reparations is all about, by the way. And again, I say that as a black man. With reparations, you're just trying to buy my vote. And as a black man, I'm saying you're not going to, because number one, it's not your money to do that. And number two, I think the time for reparations actually existed, but it existed when there were actual slaves, who were being freed. That time has come and gone. And so, but anyway, he's trying to kind of puff himself up, David, and say, "Hey, look at me.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And I could be totally wrong on this, but didn't freed slaves get land?
No, they didn't.
Was that not part of a deal that they got? They didn't get any?
And that's what I think they should have gotten.
Acres and a mule?
No.
That didn't happen?
No, that didn't happen. Okay. They should have gotten some land. They worked for it. Yeah. Were not paid for it. That was the time for reparations. Because that time is long gone. And so that cost us bye-bye.
And by the way, a lot of people look back at slavery as the issue for black people in our country, as far as being disadvantaged. Yeah. Okay, so per capita net worth is lower for black people, all that stuff. It's true. And a lot of people look back to slavery for that. But I'm not sure that is the genesis of the issue. I think it could probably be the 1960s when the welfare state came in and we started splitting. We started seeing the family degenerate.
Yes.
Because I believe, and again, don't quote me on this because I'm kind of doing this from memory, but I believe that the black community, quote unquote, was doing fairly well in the early 20th century when, other than obviously the discrimination they were facing. Sure. But what I'm talking about is economically, their family units were intact. They were advancing.
Now, see, here's something that I can, and normally I say you have as much right to address these things as anybody. I don't believe the progressives' idea that, hey, if you're white, you can't talk about these issues. And I think that's a lie. But I do have this additional advantage in that I actually lived during the times you're talking about.
Yeah, so tell me.
So, and I can back you up. As a black man, I was not in favor of the Jim Crow laws, and I resisted them, and those are wrong, and that's what you're not saying you are. But the black family unit was strong, and we had, at that time, more conservative values than many whites. During that time, as far as marriage, husband and wife supporting yourself and that kind of stuff. After desegregation, a lot of that began to change. I'm glad for desegregation, but unfortunately, when they desegregated, they also came up with the idea.
Social programs.
Right. Social safety nets, all that kind of stuff. That sounds great. And at that point, the black family began to degrade. And what was pushed by those programs were single households headed by single moms. That was pushed for black families. And David, I literally saw it destroy the black community. I saw it happen. I saw us adopt all the things that were the worst part of American society rather than the good things that America offered.
Well, and those things that have harmed the black community over the years, they're being promoted to everybody.
Yes.
At this point, especially. So we talk about the family unit and how important that is, how black families and white families and everybody thrived when that was the norm. Mm-hmm. It was good for society. It turns out that the family unit is, it actually accommodates human flourishing.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So
it's sort of almost like it was God's idea.
Yeah, it was like God's idea, and go figure. But now what we see is, and this marriage law that they signed feeds into this, and it's not just this marriage law. It's divorce being so rampant, no fault divorce, and all this stuff, degrading the family unit to the point where we need our families for flourishing.
Yes. Society flourished because of that.
And the family, the nuclear family is being denigrated, degraded, discarded in many cases.
Don't you remember that it used to be, they moved it, but on BLM's website, the nuclear family was considered a racist model?
Yes.
And they were against it. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing that play out in real time right now, not only for blacks. It's worse, I think, in the black community, but it's being now attacked in every community. Every single one, the nuclear family is looked at as the enemy, and progressives are trying to destroy it. We're seeing that in real time.
Yep.
And it's sad. And again, Cleve, you sound like a broken record. I'll say that right now. But again, where is the church? Where is the American church? Because it is our province to address these issues, and we've chosen, for the majority. I'm not saying every church, okay, but for the majority, we've chosen to remain silent, as if the church has nothing to say on these great issues of the day, like the nuclear family. Because if I'm not mistaken, David, if you read the Bible kind of lays that out, that the family is the unit that God built himself and ordained himself, and it has worked beautifully until we forsook it.
And by the way, I'd say, young people, if you want to change the world, get married young, have babies young. Just pump them out.
Well,
crank them out. All right. No, keep them coming. 7, 8, 9, 10.
One moderation. When we say get married young, I don't think there's some certain people. I think some people are too young to get married. Okay, let's go ahead.
This coming from a 22. I was 22 when I got married.
I was 20 when I got married. But I'm just saying that's not necessarily the best model. There needs to be some maturity. Okay. And I'm afraid
that there's a problem too. People are maturing much later than they used to, and also you want to become the person you're supposed to be. You want to really mature. Get married.
Well, again, I only qualify that to the point is I do firmly believe, I didn't have this, but I do firmly believe in having some good counseling and some good premarital preparation before you jump into it. Okay. I know what you're saying, but again, this is where we've gotten now. And the way to strengthen it is not just to jump into it, but to lay the groundwork.
When I was young, the rebels, they listened to punk rock music, which, by the way, I did. They wore baggy clothes. They did their own thing. They spiked their hair and they colored it pink. Wore a chain on their wallet, did stuff like that. Okay, the rebels did stuff like that. They were unique. They were their own person. They went their own way. Today, if you want to be a rebel, do what I just said.
Yeah.
Get married young, have a family. Radical.
I still say not too young, okay? But having said that, again, to be quite honest with you, Dave, that's already happened. It is already now radical to be against the progressive movement. The new radical are those who are truly conservative based upon biblical principles. We're the new radicals. We are the new counterculture. Tradition is now radical. Exactly. And so, welcome to the counterculture. And I think the church is the perfect thing to fight against this culture that is rotten to the core that we're dealing with right now. All right, real quickly, some good news. The overturning of Roe v. Wade is resulting in a lower amount of abortions. Love it. And it's happening. I mean, the stats are showing this. And again, you and I feel actually there should be no abortion. Mm-hmm. But I think we ought to rejoice when we do see some progress in that. Absolutely. And right now, I'll just give an example. Abortions in Texas have dropped by 97%. Wow. It happened in the month after that reversal of Roe v. Wade, by the way, in that state. Back in July, there were only, I hate to say it, but that's what we got to say. There were only 68 abortions performed in the state of Texas. That was down from more than 2,500, though, in the month before. Wow. So, again, I don't want to see any abortions, but there's some good news. The bans and the battles in the states where they threw this battle for abortion, it is working. Mm-hmm. It's working. Yes, good. That's a reason to celebrate. And they're not going without a fight. No. The radical left and the darkness is doing its best to encroach. Mm-hmm. I will say another piece of good news. I thought you might come out with this. Is Ron DeSantis putting together that group that is going to investigate lies by the vaccine manufacturers and fraud. So they're possibly going to get in trouble for fraud in the state of Florida. And that goes back to something you said for a long time, is that our states are going to have to step up and do these things and stand up for our rights. And in the state of Florida, they're doing that. Ron DeSantis, by the way, if you want to talk about, earlier we talked about Gavin Newsom positioning himself maybe to run against Joe Biden. Right. This is Ron DeSantis positioning himself again. He's been doing it a lot, but positioning himself again to run against Trump. Yeah. You know why? Because Trump, he is the vaccine president.
And his biggest weakness is going to be, I'm telling you, his biggest weakness at the time. But I'm telling you.
I know what you're saying, but now it looks bad, but at the time it was good.
Yes, now it looks bad. But see, that's what I'm talking about. When every candidate that runs, they have to have a lane. Mm-hmm. And if Ron DeSantis is going to successfully run as the non-Trump, as the Trumpy, not Trump candidate, mm-hmm. he's going to have a lane. This is the lane. This is a lane that he needs to get around Donald Trump, is this vaccine issue, because he can successfully pin that on Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is still promoting the vaccine and playing cards for some reason.
Well, now the digital card thing was a
weird.
No, it was not weird.
Yes.
No, it was not weird. It's weird if you're trying to be president, but as a business move, it was perfect.
He's literally running for president.
But as a businessman, which he still is now, he's not a president now. That move was perfect. If I were a businessman, not somebody running for president, he sold all that, by the way. It sold out.
That's unbelievable.
It happened.
And his announcement was funny.
But the point is,
like, hopefully your favorite president, better than Lincoln.
It's sold out. These NFTs, these I forget what NFT stands for.
Something tokens.
Non-fungible tokens, whatever. But the point is, it sold out. It was a bonanza. And the guy still has to earn a living, by the way.
Why would anybody buy that? I don't get it.
It worked. So as a business thing, it was great. And he knew, I think, it was going to get this reaction. He just said, I'm still in business. I'm still a businessman. So do what you got to do. I say the same thing about Elon Musk. Do what you got to do. You're a businessman. A lot of what you do and say won't make sense to me otherwise. So, at any rate, David, folks can catch all of this again, all the hijinks and everything we're talking about.
Well, find the David and Cleve Mere Conservatism NFT at no, we don't have one of those. That would be cool though. Apple Podcasts, Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. No NFTs yet.
Anywhere you hear your favorite podcast. David Perry and I'm Cleve Walker. Again, do join us for the next podcast, Mere Conservatism. And it's not over with yet, okay? Keep the faith. Don't give up the fight. Bye-bye.